Okay, we're in GSP versus Matt Hughes. Um, Beautiful example here of counter wrestling. I suppose you would call it judo, or, um, but yeah, we're going to see GSP take down one of one of the best wrestlers that's been in the sport. So GSP Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes has just attempted to take down GSP on the cage. GSP has successfully stopped that and is now driving Matt Hughes off the cage. So we're going to see that Matt Hughes has an overhook on this side. GSP has an underhook, and we have a fight here for the underhook. And George St-Pierre is just pinning this arm underneath. We're going to see exactly how these holds should be being controlled at this point. Now, we're seeing that Matt Hughes is defensive because he's got an overhook on this side and no deep underhook on this side. He's trying to keep his hips away from George St-Pierre. He's using his head as a frame. And George St-Pierre, because he's got a dominant underhook, is trying to get his hips in. Okay, so this is what you would expect from two wrestlers. He's got an overhook, he wants his hips away. He's got an underhook, he wants his hips under. Okay, very basic. What we're going to see is GSP start to drive around on that underhook, and that head is bothering GSP because it's framing against him. So what he's going to do is he's going to move up and he's going to take his right arm and he's going to kind of fake but just touch Matt Hughes as though he's going to get a collar tie to pull the head down. Now Matt Hughes at this point will move his head to the wrong side because he thinks he's going to do well by driving that underhook in. So he's been given the opportunity here to drive that underhook in. Now, I don't know if George St-Pierre did this on purpose or he was actually going to do something with the head. I like to think that he knows what he's doing. So in touching the head, what he's allowing Matt Hughes to do is to move into a more powerful position with an underhook. But because he's got the collar tie on this side of the body, Matt Hughes can't put his head on this side, he has to put his head on this side. So I think it's a lovely bit of technique. It might just be reactionary, but we can see that now what has happened is that Matt Hughes has gone, oh shit, because we have GSP who's managed now to take his chest down into Matt Hughes' chest. Alright, that frame's gone. We are seeing George St-Pierre with a good underhook looking directly down at the back of this foot. He's now in a much more better control of this clinch. Matt Hughes is not in control. So Matt Hughes needs to go back to his defensive clinch. So he's going to rotate his body. He's going to lift that underhook. He's going to try and get his head back in on George St-Pierre's head. And he's going to turn around. Also, I think this is more about clinch wrestling, but I don't know if he's aware that the cage is there and he wants to keep his back off the cage as well. I'm not sure. I think there's three things that could be happening here. One of them is he's lifting that shoulder, he's getting those hips out, and he's getting his head back into the frame, which he lost. Two, he is getting his back off the cage. He doesn't want to be driven against the cage with George St-Pierre and maybe double-legged off that. And then three, as we'll see at the moment, with this movement that he's done, this little pivot out to the side, he has now opened up George St-Pierre for a knee. And the knee goes into the gut. Okay. Problem with throwing this knee is that he has now brought his hips in and he's stood himself up and he's got no pressure on here. All George St-Pierre needs to do is to lift this elbow to keep George St-Pierre, keep Matt Hughes more or less upright with his centre of gravity over the top. So there we go with lifting the elbow. Matt Hughes again has to now drive his head in to try and clear his hips and rotate his hips out to this side. But again, he's opened up himself now, and George St-Pierre is going to throw a knee. Now, normally what we would see at this point is we would see George St-Pierre throw a knee and then come directly back down. But I think George St-Pierre is using this knee, because it's not very effective, to allow him to step around Matt Hughes, driving up that shoulder to be able to turn Matt Hughes. And now look at what he's done to Matt's body. Because Matt is set on keeping his head against his head, his hips are not in alignment. He's actually arched his body over here. Matt would actually be better off at this point probably with his head out. Yep, because his head is going to take him in the direction of the next takedown. Okay, so what we're going to see is we're going to see this arch and this weight, this offsetting of his weight, because the weight's being offset at the centre of gravity. We're going to see George St-Pierre use this. Now, Matt Hughes will be feeling pretty safe here because George St-Pierre hasn't got body lock, he hasn't got grips. His arm here has no overhook or no nothing. So Matt Hughes will be feeling pretty safe here that he can't be taken down. Well, traditionally, with wrestling, there's no real takedown here, but with GSP doing Judo, and an example would be Khabib. We're going to see exactly what Khabib would do from this position. So we're going to see George St-Pierre step his right foot into the control zone and turn his toes out. Okay, so he's now moved his hips across Matt Hughes' hips. Matt is still keeping his head here. He wants to turn this leg out and force GSP in this direction. GSP is going to throw his hip out and across Matt Hughes' body, and at the same time he's going to collect and control this wrist and hold it against his chest. So we can see that he collects and holds the wrist against his chest. He's shot his hip out, and he's going to thunder that leg through the thigh of Matt Hughes while lifting the shoulder and taking Matt Hughes' upper body over the centre of gravity. Okay, this is absolutely beautiful, guys. Now just torsioning and turning, he ends up in perfect side control. Absolutely beautiful. Now, who knows if it's Tayatoshi or whatever. Okay, I don't think that really matters. But we just have to say, absolutely beautiful setup. Beautiful counter to what is good wrestling technique from Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes was doing kind of everything right, but again, movement around the body of GSP. He circles around, he pivots around, which offsets the body weight, and it's just absolutely fantastic. If you can do this, then fantastic, go for it. If you can't, then you're just a normal human being,